Everyone. My name is Raed Ghanem. I am a PhD student at the University of Miskolc. It's nice to be here with you today, and thank you to give me the opportunity to participate in this important conference. Today, I'm going to present some information on legal texts about children's rights in the light of the Syrian crisis. Uh, I am going to talk about three main groups of rights, and in each one, I'm going to talk about the three parties, the legal guarantees, and parental responsibility, and some statistics. As you know, there are many international conventions and treaties on children's rights, but the most important, the Convention on the Rights of Child in 1989, and the three optional protocols. Despite the Syria that signed that convention a long time ago, but the right of children remained legally confirmed to many different legal texts between the Constitution, criminal and civil laws, and the labor law until the passage of the Child Rights in 2015. The importance of this law is that it's the first law that specializes on the protecting children's rights and defines aspects of parental responsibility. On the other hand, this law was issued in the middle of the crisis, and it is the opportunity to evaluate the effectiveness of the law and its effect on children's rights. But if there are many international and national legal texts emphasizing the protection of children's rights during the armed conflict, were those texts useful in the Syrian crisis? And can the legal texts that refer to parental responsibility be applied in exceptional circumstances such as war? Here I'm going to present some of the facts on the war and the basic rights of the children in Syria and the aspects of parental responsibility and those rights. Just a minute, please.
Actually, we can see your first slide.
Yeah.
Okay.
The right to health and the protection, the Convention on the Rights of the Child and the optional protocols affirm the right of children to life and obligation of state parties to guarantee the survival and development of the child, maintaining his physical and mental health and safety, and taking all necessary measures for this. This is what necessary calls for securing medical care for children, protecting them from acts of violence and physical and psychological abuse, and securing decent living conditions for them. With the beginning of the Syrian crisis, there was no national law that clearly protects the right to protection and health care for children. The Act of Child Rights 2015 contains clear provisions in this regard. The most important of which are the right of the child to life and development, the right of the child to be protected from physical and psychological abuse and sexual harassment, protecting children from recruitment and participation in combat operations, protect the children from being trafficked. What about partner responsibility? Partner responsibility with regard to the aforementioned rights, there was no effective way to control parental responsibility in the first 4 years of the crisis, for two reasons. The first related to the war and the choice, and the second was the absence of the clear legal text and parental responsibility. After the issuance of the Child Rights Law, the responsibility was determined, although this limitation was narrow and in general terms. The most important articles: every child has the right Every child has the right of our parents to protection and education and care. The responsibility for the upbringing and care of the child rests with his parents. The child's parents or those charged with his care are legally bound by the following: giving the child the necessary vaccination and refusing to do so amounts to family neglect. Submit a copy of the health card within the child's school enrollment papers in the basic education stage and beyond. And here, the moment of the truth. Statistics. In the early years of the crisis, it was not easy to provide clear statistics about violation of children's rights regarding health care and protection. Most of the numbers were estimates, but according to UNICEF press release on March 2021, about 5 years after the issuance of the Child Rights Protection Law, about 90% of children need humanitarian assistance. More than half a million children under 5 years of age in Syria suffer from stunting as a result of chronic malnutrition. There are still a huge number of displaced children who live in poor conditions. The number of children who showed symptoms of psychological and social distress doubled in 2020 because of constant exposure to violence and intense fear. Nearly 12,000 children were killed or injured according to verified data. More than 5,700 children have been recruited to fight, some as young as 7 years old. Economical and social rights. Legal guarantees. Child labor is considered one of the serious challenges to children's rights, and this matter was regulated by the labor law in Syria until 2015, when the Child Rights Law was issued, which includes articles related to child labor. The most important of these articles: prohibition of child labor under the age of 15, prohibition of the economic exploitation of children and their work at night, imposing obligations on employers to protect children and to prevent their exploitation, impose penalties for violators, giving the child the right to claim compensation for damage. On the other hand, the problem of child marriage. On the other hand, the problem of child marriage is considered one of the serious problems in society. Before the crisis, Syria was one of the least Arab countries in child marriage. Although some civil status law allowed marriage at the age of 15 and perhaps earlier. In this regard, the 2015 Child Rights Law indicated that a boy and a girl had complete legal capacity to marry at the age of 18. The law affirms the social rights of child, the most important of which is the right of child to live in a cohesive family. In addition, the right to rest, play, and engage in various activities. Parental responsibility. It's noted that a legal system in Syria doesn't address parental responsibility with regard to child labor. The 2012 Children's Rights Law didn't refer to parental responsibility responsibility for child labor and only imposed some obligations on employers. Before 2015, there was no legal obligation on the parents on the matter of child marriage, and it was related to civil status of the different religious sects. The Children's Rights Law issued in 2015 indicated the age of legal capacity of marriage for marriage at the 18 years, but it didn't establish any parental responsibility in the event of violation. Statistics. According to UNICEF, a press release on 2021 about the children of Syria, the food basket increased by 230%, a significant increase in child labor, some of them as young as 7 years old, and noticeable increase in child marriage. Finally, cultural and educational rights. Legal guarantees. The right to education is one of the most important rights affirmed by international treaties and conventions in human rights in general and children's rights in particular. Prior to the outbreak of the war in Syria, education was compulsory at the primary level under Article 37 of the 1973 Syrian Constitution. There were some restrictions to monitor the compulsory education. With the beginning of the Syrian crisis, a new constitution for the country in 2012 was approved. Article 29 of this constitution raised compulsory education by 3 stages, but the matter remains useless due to the lack of penal support and because of the choice that involved the country, where the oversight of compulsory education became very difficult. The 2015 Children's Rights Act also referred to the child's rights to free education and compulsory education at the basic education stage. That aforementioned child rights law included many articles that stressed the need to develop and the child's talent, provide him with educational and cultural materials, and the need to adapt the various media materials to the child's age and interests. Parental responsibility. In the early years of the Syrian crisis, compulsory education was mentioned in the 2012 Syrian constitution without explicit mention of parental responsibility in this regard, while the Children's Rights Law of 2015 include explicit articles on parental responsibility, and those articles were upheld with a fine for parents who refuse to send their son to school. In our view, it's not deterrent punishment given the importance of education and its impact on the future of children. It's noted in this regard that the law didn't impose responsibility on parents in cultural aspects, and perhaps it was satisfied with a general statement about the right to education and care. Statistics. As a result, there are about 3.5 million children out of school, 40% of them are girls, and destruction of a large number of schools due to the hostilities. A little conclusion. The existence of international conventions and treaties to protect the rights of the child during war is not considered a substitute for national law, which constitutes a guarantee of the rights of children not only in case of war, but also in exceptional circumstances in general. These laws must specifically clarify the aspects of parental responsibility and arrange deterrent penalties for violators, especially in developing countries. But at the same time, the parental responsibility in exceptional circumstances such as war must be evaluated in different phases than the evaluation in normal circumstances, as it's illogical to talk about parental responsibility to provide a decent housing for a refugee family living in a tent.